My aunt claimed she was promised our family's farm and tried to kick me off the land. In court, she said, I was the only one who cared for it. I quietly handed the judge a series of receipts showing I paid for every repair and maintenance. Her lawyer whispered, we have no case. I never thought I'd end up in a legal battle over my own home, especially not against family. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when money and property are involved, people show their true colors. This is the story of how my aunt tried to steal my family's farm, the farm I spent years keeping alive, and how I made sure she'd never step foot on that land again. The farm that raised me. I grew up on a farm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. My grandfather built it from nothing in the 1950s. It started as a small operation, just a few acres of crops and some livestock, but over the years, it grew into something special. The farm was the heart of our family. My dad worked it from the time he was old enough to hold a shovel. My uncle moved out of state when he was young, and my Aunt Denise. She never cared about the farm. She left as soon as she turned 18 and never looked back. Meanwhile, I spent my childhood there. I learned how to care for the animals, fix fences, and drive a tractor before I could even legally drive a car. My parents ran the farm until they passed away unexpectedly when I was in my early 20s. I didn't have time to grieve. If I walked away, the farm would die with them. I wasn't going to let that happen. So, I did what had to be done. I worked from sunrise to sunset, took out loans for repairs, replaced the irrigation system, fixed the barn roof, and made sure every inch of that land was cared for. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. Then Denise showed up. A familiar face, an unfamiliar demand. One afternoon, I was loading hay when I saw a car I didn't recognize pull up the driveway. A shiny black Mercedes. Definitely not the kind of vehicle that belonged on a farm. Denise stepped out wearing expensive boots that had probably never touched dirt before. She looked around, wrinkling her nose like she had just smelled something bad. Wow, she said. I can't believe this place is still standing. I wiped the sweat off my forehead and stared at her. What are you doing here? She smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the same fake, practiced expression she always had when she wanted something. I just thought I'd come check on what's mine. I actually laughed. What are you talking about? She tilted her head like I was the crazy one. Grandpa told me I would inherit the farm. You've been here long enough. It's time for me to take over. Now, for context, my grandfather passed away years ago, long before my parents did. His will was clear, everything went to my dad. And when my dad passed, it legally went to me. I shook my head. No, Denise. That's not how this works. Her smile didn't waver. I have witnesses. That got my attention. Witnesses? People who heard Grandpa say he wanted me to have it. I let out a sharp breath. That's funny. Because I have a will that says otherwise. Her smile dropped. Just for a second. Then she smoothed out her expression and nodded. We'll see about that. Then she got back into her car and drove away. Legal papers and a brewing storm. 2 weeks later, I was served with legal papers. Denise was suing me for the farm. Her claim. That Grandpa had intended for her to inherit the land, and since my dad passed before updating his will, she had a legal right to take over. She wasn't just trying to take the farm. She wanted me off the land completely. I called my lawyer immediately. He was an older guy, had been handling property disputes in Lancaster for decades. When I explained what was happening, he sighed. She doesn't have a case. But she's going to make your life miserable trying to convince the court otherwise. And he was right. For months, she dragged it out. She brought in old family friends, people who hadn't even visited the farm in years, to claim they remembered Grandpa saying he wanted her to have it. She spun this sob story about how she was the only one who truly cared about the land. Meanwhile, I kept working. Kept taking care of the farm while she was in some Philadelphia high-rise, drinking wine and waiting for the court to hand her the land she had never lifted a finger to maintain. The court date finally came. The courtroom showdown. Denise showed up dressed like she was auditioning for a reality show. All black, oversized sunglasses, fake tears ready to go. Her lawyer. Some high-powered guy from Philly who probably charged more per hour than I made in a week. Me. I had my old, no-nonsense lawyer and a folder full of receipts. Denise took the stand first. She cried, played the victim, claimed she had always been the rightful owner but had been too kind to fight for it before. She said I had refused to leave and had been letting the farm go to waste. I sat there, gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Then it was my turn. I stood up, walked to the front, and handed a thick folder to the judge. Your Honor, I have receipts. Inside? Years of expenses, property taxes, repairs, livestock feed, vet bills, irrigation, fencing. Every single dime I had poured into the farm was accounted for. Emails from my dad before he passed, talking about how the farm was meant to stay with me. Handwritten letters from Grandpa, where he said how proud he was that I was keeping the farm alive. Denise's lawyer started flipping through the papers, his face getting paler with every page. He leaned over and whispered something to her. Her expression collapsed. Then her lawyer stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "We have no case, Your Honor." The courtroom fell silent after Denise's lawyer muttered, "We have no case." The judge barely looked at her. He was already done with her nonsense. Then we're done here, he said, setting the folder aside. This farm belongs to my name. Denise didn't move. Her face was frozen, like her brain hadn't caught up to what just happened. She had lost. I should have felt relieved, but something in my gut told me this wasn't over. As we walked out of the courtroom, Denise grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. This isn't finished, she hissed, her fake courtroom tears long gone. You have no idea what you just did. I shook her off and walked away. I should have known she meant it. The first sign of trouble. I thought losing in court would make Denise give up. I was wrong. A week later, I got a call from a neighbor. You okay over there? He asked. I frowned. Yeah, why? Well, he said, I saw some guys poking around near your barn last night. Looked shady. Thought I should let you know. My stomach dropped. I checked the security cameras the second I hung up. Sure enough, 2 men in dark clothing had been creeping around my property in the middle of the night. They stayed near the barn, looking around, whispering to each other, then disappeared into the woods. I sent the footage to the police, but unless they actually did something, there wasn't much they could do. Still, I had a pretty good idea who sent them. Mysterious buyers start showing up. A few days later, a stranger pulled up my driveway in a brand new truck. Guy looked like a real estate agent, expensive watch, 2 white teeth, fake friendly smile. You must be, my name, he said, stepping out and extending a hand. I was just admiring the property. Beautiful land. I'd love to make you an offer. I blinked. This farm isn't for sale. He kept smiling. Well, that's not what I heard. Something cold crawled up my spine. What exactly did you hear? I asked. He chuckled, pulling out a folder. A woman named Denise contacted my office. She said the farm had been in her family for years but was in need of a new owner. We're willing to offer you a generous sum to take it off your hands. I clenched my jaw. She was trying to sell my farm behind my back. I didn't say another word. Just turned around, walked inside, and slammed the door in his face. The smear campaign. Denise wasn't done. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing small but weird things happening around town. The feed store suddenly stopped extending credit to me, even though I'd never missed a payment before. My tractor repair guy started dodging my calls, even though I'd been using him for years. I heard from an old friend that Denise had been going around town telling people I was running the farm into the ground, and that I was about to lose it. It was death by 1,000 cuts. She was trying to make my life so hard that I'd be forced to sell. She didn't care about the farm. She just wanted me to suffer. Then, the fire happened. One night, I was dead asleep when I woke up to the sound of crackling outside my window. The barn was on fire. Flames roared into the sky, lighting up the night like a beacon. I didn't even have time to think, I just ran. By the time I got there, the fire was too big. The heat was suffocating. My animals were still inside. I ran to the door, but the flames were already crawling up the beams. My lungs burned as I tried to pull the latch, but it was melted shut. The fire department arrived, but by the time they got it under control, it was too late. I lost everything in that barn. And deep down, I knew, this wasn't an accident. The investigation begins. I stood in the wreckage of what was once my barn, the air still thick with smoke. The fire department did their job, but they couldn't save much. The roof had collapsed, the wooden beams reduced to glowing embers. The smell of burnt hay and charred wood filled my lungs. The worst part? The animals that didn't make it out. I stood there, fists clenched, feeling nothing but rage. This wasn't bad luck. This was sabotage. A fire investigator walked up to me. He was older, face lined from years on the job. He glanced at the damage, then at me. You got enemies? I didn't hesitate. Yeah. One. A convenient alibi. When the fire report came back, my gut feeling was confirmed. The fire wasn't an accident. It started near the barn doors, where the lock had been melted shut. It had been doused in accelerant. Someone had locked my animals inside and set the place on fire. I already knew who I wanted to blame, but Denise was too smart to get her hands dirty. And sure enough, when I confronted her, she acted shocked. My God, she gasped, hand over her chest like she actually cared. Who would do such a thing? You tell me. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You show up out of nowhere, try to take my farm, lose in court, and now my barn just happens to burn down. That's a coincidence. She smirked. Actually smirked. Too bad I was in Philadelphia that night. I was at a gala. Plenty of witnesses. She wasn't lying. I checked. Denise had an airtight alibi. But she wasn't the one who set the fire. She had someone else do it. The stranger in the woods. A few days later, I was repairing a fence when I saw movement in the woods. Someone was watching me. I dropped what I was doing and started walking toward the tree line. The figure stepped back, trying to disappear into the brush. I ran. Branches whipped against my face, my boots thudding against the ground. Whoever it was tried to cut through the trees, but I was faster. I grabbed the guy's jacket and yanked him back. He was young, maybe early 20s. Greasy hair, dirty hoodie, shifty eyes. He smelled like cigarettes and sweat. What are you doing on my property? I demanded. He yanked away, looking panicked. Nothing, man, I was just cutting through. Bullshit. I stepped closer. You were watching me. His eyes darted around like he was searching for an escape. Then he said something that made my blood go cold. Look, man, I was just making sure it was finished, okay? I froze. What did you just say? He realized his mistake and took off running. I chased him, but he was fast. By the time I reached the road, he had already disappeared into an old blue pickup truck and sped away. I memorized the plates. The call that changed everything. I took the plate number to a buddy of mine who worked at a local shop. He ran it through a system and got a name. And guess what? The truck was registered to Denise's boyfriend. I didn't even know she had a boyfriend. She never mentioned him. But apparently, she'd been shacking up with some loser with a record. Arson. Theft. Breaking and entering. I had the proof I needed. Denise wasn't just trying to make my life miserable. She had escalated. She had hired someone to destroy my farm. And she thought she could get away with it. The truth comes out. I wasn't going to let this slide. Denise had done everything she could to push me off my own land. She failed in court, so she went behind my back, sent men to lurk around my property, and when that didn't work, she burned my barn down. And now? I had proof. I wasn't about to waste time. I called the police. Denise's boyfriend rolls over. The cops tracked down Denise's boyfriend, the guy who ran off that night. His name was Kyle Mason, and he had a long list of petty crimes under his belt. At first, he refused to talk. But when the cops started pressing him, mentioning arson charges, potential jail time, and the fact that Denise could walk away clean while he took the fall, he cracked. She paid me, he muttered, head down. Told me to scare him. Mess up his farm a little. But then she said to make it permanent. Permanent? The officer asked. Kyle swallowed hard. She said if the barn was gone, he'd have no choice but to sell. The police got it all on record. Now, I just had to wait for Denise's reaction. The confrontation. I didn't want to ambush her. I wanted her to see it coming. So, when I found her at a fancy little cafe in Philadelphia, sipping overpriced wine with her equally smug friends, I walked straight up to her table. The moment she saw me, her face dropped. What are you doing here? She asked, gripping her glass like she was afraid I'd knock it over. I leaned in, just enough for only her to hear. Kyle confessed. Her fingers twitched. Just a slight movement. But I caught it. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, voice steady. Kyle who? I smiled. The one you paid to burn my barn down. The women at the table gasped. A few people nearby turned to stare. Denise's face turned red, not with guilt, but with rage. You can't prove anything, she snapped. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Kyle's voice filled the cafe. She paid me, she said, to make it permanent. Her entire body went stiff. Her hands clenched the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Denise, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You tried to destroy our family farm. You tried to get me killed. She shot up from her seat, knocking over her wine glass. Red liquid spilled across the table. You're lying, she shrieked. But the damage was done. Her friends looked disgusted. The people in the cafe were whispering. And then, before she could say another word, 2 uniformed officers walked in. The officers approached her calmly, but their presence was loud enough for everyone to notice. Denise Carter, one of them said. She froze. We need you to come with us. Denise turned to me, her face contorted with fury. You ruined me, she spat. I should have had that farm. It should have been mine. I shook my head. It was never yours. The officers took her by the arms. She thrashed, but it was useless. They led her out of the cafe, past the judgmental stares of the crowd, past the friends who were already distancing themselves from her. And then she was gone. The news spread fast. Denise was charged with conspiracy to commit arson, reckless endangerment, and property damage. Kyle took a plea deal to reduce his sentence, which meant he testified against her in court. She fought it, of course, she did, but with the evidence stacked against her, there wasn't much she could do. She ended up taking a plea deal herself. No serious jail time, but a hefty fine, a criminal record, and a court order to stay away from me and my farm. That should have been the end of it. But family betrayals don't just go away. Reflection and resolution. I'd like to say I never thought about Denise again, that I moved on with my life without another moment of anger or regret. But that would be a lie. I thought about her a lot. Not because I missed her, I didn't, but because I couldn't understand why she did it. She didn't need the farm. She had her city life, her money, or what was left of it, her social circles. But I realized something. Denise didn't want the farm. She wanted control. She wanted to take something from me just because she thought she could. She wanted to win, no matter what it cost. And in the end, she lost everything. As for me, I rebuilt the barn. I kept working. And I made sure that the farm, my farm, would never fall into the wrong hands again. Some people think family will always have your back. That no matter what, blood is thicker than water. But the truth is, family isn't about blood. It's about who stands with you. And Denise? She made sure she'd never stand with me again.